April 2024 is the 20th anniversary of the entire Toaru franchise, including Index and Railgun, and it's never been a better time to get into the franchise than now. In this video, I'm going to give you my recommended watch order for the anime, or if you're hardcore and want to start the light novels and manga, which I recommend by the way, I will give you my comprehensive read order for the entire franchise, Index, Railgun, all spin-offs included, that you should read if you're stuck about where the hell to start this giant franchise which rivals One Piece. As I know, it can be confusing for new fans of the series to get into this, but it's worth the adventure, trust me. Or if you're a fan currently reading Index or Railgun, this will help inform you where to start the other spin-offs or entries into the franchise if you're unsure. So make sure you stick to the end of the video to find out where I recommend you read everything. So my recommended watch order for the anime hasn't changed. I still think people should watch the series in release order. So that being Index Season 1, Railgun Season 1, then Index Season 2, then the Index movie, which is optional because it's not too important. Technically, it's not filler, but it kinda is at this point. Then Railgun S, which is Railgun Season 2, by the way. Then Index Season 3, then the Accelerator anime, and lastly, Railgun T. If you try and watch this series chronologically with the anime, it's kind of tough to do because Railgun does overlap with the events of Index on multiple occasions, so it's kind of impossible to watch it chronologically. I think Mystic Chronexia did a video trying to do that, and it's just all over the place, so I really don't recommend that. I think starting at Index Season 1 is a great place because it introduces you to the universe of both the science side and the magic side. Hopefully that helps you. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about the light novel and manga. So Index is based off a light novel, and Railgun, which is the other main spin-off of it, is a manga. But there are also many other entries into the franchise, spin-offs, side stories, etc. that are either light novels or manga, and there is a hell of a lot to read. But I'll be focusing on the main canon. I won't be talking about non-canon material. That's pretty much bonus stuff anyway if you really are in the need for more Toaru. If you do like non-canon, I probably do recommend the Idol No Accelerator manga, which is a huge parody of the entire Index and Railgun series. It's super funny, so if there's one non-canon work I do recommend, it's definitely that one. Without further ado, let's start the read order. So first, we're starting with Old Testament, which is the original light novel series of Index, and this pretty much covers all seasons of the anime. So starting off with Old Testament 1, of course, and then reading up to Old Testament 13. And then you want to read Index Side Story 1. It may be called a side story, but it's pretty important as it was actually adapted in the anime, and it also introduces one of the three main protagonists of Index. So yes, definitely read Side Story 1. Then you want to do the double by reading Old Testament 14 and 15. Now, what you can do now is optional. You can either wait until you finish Old Testament, or you can read it here and now. What I'm talking about is the Dark Matter spin-off. So this is a spin-off of the number 2 level 5, who is called Kakina Teitoku, and he fights Accelerator in Old Testament 15, or that guy in Index Season 3 if you've seen the anime. This spin-off covers his backstory, but I do recommend you being introduced to him via the main Index series because that's where he made his debut. It's only 1 volume, so you'll be able to read it pretty quickly. Next, you just want to read Old Testament 16 before going on to Side Story 2. Side Story 2 takes place in multiple time frames because it covers different characters at different points in the Index timeline, even before the start of Old Testament 1. But it does catch up to the present day, and I think it does occur around Old Testament 16. Either way, it was published in Japan after Old Testament 16, so you might as well read it here. Then you want to finish Old Testament by reading Old Testament 17 to 22. And congrats, you have now finished the first light novel series of Index. There's 2 more. Yep, this is a huge franchise. Now that you have finished Old Testament, I'm going to give you a break from Index and read all the side stories and spin-offs you should probably start before starting New Testament. Firstly, Norse mythology SS, aka Kanzaki SS. I think this is one volume that some people skip when reading Index, and do not skip this volume because it introduces a character that later appears in New Testament called Brundhild Eiktobel. She's not the most important character in the world, but when she does show up in New Testament, you won't really care about her unless you've read Norse mythology. Therefore, I think this is pretty important in my opinion. One of the side stories that is optional is Volume SP. This volume has different stories in it covering different characters from both the magic side and science side. It's additional background information you might want to check out, but yeah, up to you. Similarly, Necessarius SS and Agnese SS. This covers how these two magic side groups end up joining the Anglican Church in Old Testament. So yes, these two do occur in Old Testament about halfway through. But yeah, not the most important. Up to you if you want more info. And yes, you can also start Railgun, the source material that is. I think if you've seen the anime, you probably don't need to read the manga because the anime does a decent job. Well, at least season 2 and season 3, I should say. But bear in mind, the second half of both Railgun season 1 and Railgun season 2 were anime original arcs. They've been incorporated into the canon, but initially they were filler. There are little bits in the manga that are being changed that are not completely like how the anime presents things, so it might be worth reading for that. But if you really don't want to read it, then I think the anime should do a good job. But if you do want to read the manga, then I recommend you read volumes 1 to 10. Everything else after that is optional. And if you're curious about the chapter which Railgun Volume 10 ends at, I think it's chapter 71. Oh yeah, and how could I possibly forget? You could also check out the Accelerator manga. Accelerator is one of the 3 main protagonists of Index. He's one of the best characters in the series, but I'm afraid to say, his manga ain't that great. Allow me to explain. The first arc is decent. The second arc, not so good. That's one of the worst arcs in the entire franchise, so it's a bit of a tough read. I'd say if you've seen the Accelerator anime, you don't need to check it out, honestly. The anime's better than the manga, in my opinion, for Accelerator. So there you go. But if you want to read it, you can. Now we have finally gotten through these random spin-offs and side stories. Hopefully you don't wait too long from finishing Old Testament to starting New Testament, otherwise you might forget a lot of info. Either way, start New Testament with Volume 1, of course, which is now being published in English by Yen Press, but more on that later. And you want to get to New Testament 11. And now you can read more side stories. Yay! So now I recommend you read Biohacker SS, which covers a backstory of Toma and a bunch of other characters that appeared in New Testament Volume 11. So this will give you context on who they are. But I do recommend you reading New Testament 11 first, getting that introduction to these characters there, or character I should say. Even though Biohacker is set in the past, I do feel like you shouldn't read it chronologically in that sense. Just listen to what I say, trust me. Also, you can read Index New Testament SS. This one is not as long as SS1 and 2 in my opinion, but this one's not overly important from what I remember. There's also a Misaki figure SS, as yeah, she meets a toy version of herself that's alive. Index but Toy Story, why not? There's also Astral Buddy. This actually occurs around Old Testament 17 or 16 in the Index timeline, but again, a character that appeared in New Testament 11 appears in that, so you kind of need to know who she is to care about her. And yeah, same with Mental Out. You can read it after New Testament 11 because you'll know some background with Shokuho Misaki, who's the main protagonist of that spin-off. And you can also read A Certain Dark Side item following the item Dark Side group. Yeah, it would help you having read New Testament 11 for understanding one of the characters that appears in Volume 2. There are currently 2 volumes out for the light novel at the moment for item, but there is a manga adaptation that is also ongoing, which is catching up. And the manga is really good. Amazing adaptation. Either one, you're guaranteed to get a good story, in my opinion. Definitely recommend checking out A Certain Dark Sides item if you haven't already. Then you can follow all the way through with New Testament. You can go from 12 to 22R. Wait, 22R? What the hell is that? So for some weird reason, the author of Index, Kamachi Kazuma, decided he's not going to call the 23rd volume of New Testament NT23. He's going to call it NT22R. So once you finish New Testament volume 22, then you can read New Testament 22R, which is the final volume of New Testament. It's kind of confusing, but yeah, he just did that for stylistic reasons. Don't ask me why he did that. You can at his Twitter and he won't respond, but Don't ask me, I don't know. So congrats, you have finished New Testament. And now you can get up to date with Index by starting Genesis Testament, by reading Genesis Testament Volume 1 of all things. Who would have thought? And there is also a short Genesis Testament SS following Kuroyoru Umidori. This is a pretty short story as well, but you can check that out if you want. Not overly important again, but a bit of cool extra stuff for Genesis Testament. And you can now follow through with Genesis Testament 2 to 9. Genesis Testament 10 is coming out next month, which is April 2024. So if you're watching this video past that date, then it's already out by now. So that'll be the latest volume of Index that is out. And it is coming out on the 20th anniversary of the entire franchise, which is crazy. I can't believe this series is over 20 years old already and it's still going strong. It's great to see, and I hope this volume, which is coming out, will be an absolute blast. Fingers crossed. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't mention was that there are also Railgun side stories, which are light novels, which is kind of strange because Railgun is a manga, but there are some side stories that are actually light novels instead. And I think there's like 4 of them so far, 4 or 5. Do I recommend reading these? If you're a really big fan of the Railgun girls and you like reading light novels, then yeah, you will probably have an enjoyable time reading them. But honestly, I'm not a massive fan of these overall. I think SS1 is my favorite because that has some magic side stuff. And actually, yeah, almost all of them, apart from Cold Game, do have some magic side spin on it. So if you do like Railgun, but you also like some of the magic stuff and want to see how the Railgang would interact with magic elements when they wouldn't normally do so, that's probably the best way I can sell you to check these out if you are interested. Now, if you're actually wondering where I can read Index and Railgun, etc., Index Old Testament has been fully translated by Yen Press, which is out in English, so you can buy that from whatever seller you find on the internet. And they also have the giant omnibus Bible edition, which covers all volumes of Old Testament and the 2 side stories in one huge book, which I did review, so you can check that out if you're interested. And they also do New Testament, as I've already previously mentioned. As for Railgun, Astral Buddy, and the Accelerator manga, they are published in English by 7 Seas, so you can also get the volumes of those from whatever retailer you prefer. You can also read Genesis Testament at Bakasuki. I will post a link to Bakasuki down in the description. But as for the other stuff, you will just have to find it somewhere on the internet. I can't tell you where it is. Also, I'm planning to do a timeline video of the entire Toaru franchise for the 20th anniversary, because I think that's what people will be interested in. So I'll do like retrospective stuff for Index and Railgun. So if you want to see content like that in the nearby future, make sure you subscribe and like the video, and check out these videos on screen right now if you want to see my reviews of the Old Testament Omnibus and New Testament 1. Thank you for watching. Hope this was useful. Make sure you share it to your friends or other people you want to get into the series. And yeah, see you all next time. Bye bye.